Today, I'm going to be recommending you books based on your favorite Disney movie. So if you're a fan of Disney and you're looking for a book that will remind you of the feelings that you got while watching your favorite Disney movie, then I've got you covered. So if you like Tangled, then I would highly recommend you check out Cress by Marissa Meyer. So I'm low-key cheating with this one, not because it doesn't remind me of the movie. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's one of the books that, like, for me, was just so similar. I loved it. But the reason why I say I'm cheating is because this is the third book in a series. It is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles, and if you're not familiar with it, the Lunar Chronicles is a series of fairy tale retellings that are set in a sci-fi post-apocalyptic world, and each book follows a different fairy tale. So this one is a retelling of Rapunzel, and to me, it was so similar to the movie Tangled, especially because of the characters. So we have Cress, and Cress is the equivalent of Rapunzel. She's very isolated. She's a hacker. She lives on this spaceship by herself, and one day she has to get out of her shell and explore the world. To me, the dynamic between Cress, Rapunzel, and Thorn, who is the equivalent for me of Flynn Rider, is a very cocky, charming guy who will help Cress get out of her shell and just really explore the world to its fullest. I just really love their dynamic. It's the reason why for me it's such a similar book to the movie, because not only does the storyline follow a similar arc, we also have characters that for me embody the characters of Tangled. So if Tangled is your favorite movie, I would highly recommend you check out Cress if you've started the Lunar Chronicles, and even if Tangled is not your favorite movie, I would highly recommend these books. I love them. Just talking about this book makes me want to reread this series, which I might want to do. Who knows? But I love the series so much. It's like one of my favorites, and so I would highly recommend you check it out, and especially the third book if you enjoy Tangled. So if your favorite movie is Beauty and the Beast, then I have 3 book recommendations for you. If you're looking to get a book that is pretty much similar to the movie in terms of like the characters and the setting, then I would highly recommend you check out Lost in a Book by Jennifer Donnelly. So this one is actually published by Disney, and it follows Belle while she is being captured by the Beast. So we're at the moment where the Beast shares his library with Belle, and in the library, Belle discovers a book that will take her on the adventure of a lifetime. If you really enjoy like the character, the ambiance, and like everything about the Beauty and the Beast movie, this book is it. Like, it basically just takes the world that was created in the movie, and it's kind of a slice of life moment that could have happened in a movie that we were never shown. Kind of like the Christmas special, like An Enchanted Christmas, is that the name of the movie? That was like set during the events of Beauty and the Beast, but that was like a separate adventure from the original movie. It's kind of the same with this book. So if this is something that you enjoyed, this is an amazing middle grade. Jennifer Donnelly has written so many amazing retellings. I actually have another one that I will be recommending you later, but I love this one. It was super atmospheric, very vivid. I could really imagine everything that was going on in the book, and to me, it felt like a true adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. This is kind of what I like to see with like Disney published books, because I just feel like you should embody the work that you're taking this from, and in this case, I just really enjoyed this one. It's super fun, very quick as well, and I just really enjoyed the way that this was set, so would highly recommend. If you want a modern retelling, then I would recommend you check out Bookish and the Beast by Ashley Poston. In this one, we're following a teenage movie star and a very average girl, and basically like the movie star is like set off to this mansion. There's this library that needs to be, I guess, cataloged or renovated, and they enlist the help of the average girl, I guess. I really enjoy this because yes, it reminds me of Beauty and the Beast and like the plot. There are a lot of similar scenes, but it also took the story and made it its own thing. I just thought this was super cute, super fast paced, very enjoyable. I actually talked about this in a vlog where I read this, and if you want more thoughts, I guess I can leave that down below, but I really thought this was a well adapted story. There were enough similarities with like the original story, but without making it like a true actual retelling, because obviously there were many differences between the two. But I thought for a modern take on Beauty and the Beast, I just found that to be super believable and very fun. I also like the bookish elements. Like, yes, we have a bookworm who is renovating a library, but we also find her love of books through other things. I just really enjoyed this one, and I think you would probably too if you did enjoy Beauty and the Beast. If you want a more classic fairy tale vibe, then I would recommend A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. So in this book, we're following our main character Harper, who one day sees a girl getting abducted, and she runs to her rescue only to be abducted herself. Then Harper gets taken away to this new world, and well, the rest of the story is as you would imagine with the Beauty and the Beast retelling. I really enjoyed this. I think I read this under 24 hours. It was such a fast-paced read. I loved the characters in this. I especially loved Harper. Harper is a character that was very like strong-headed like Belle, but she also was suffering from cerebral palsy, I'm pretty sure. And I just love the depiction of like having a strong female lead that also struggles with other things. I thought the characters were really true to like what I would expect to see in such a story, if that makes sense. But but it was also its own thing. I just really enjoyed the take on the Beauty and the Beast retelling. I thought it was really well done. I loved the world building in this. I love the characters. It's just a universe that I found myself very immersed in, and I could really see this being a favorite for a lot of people because it reminds me of like the classic YA vibes that I used to love when I was a teenager. And so if you haven't read this yet, I would highly recommend it. I enjoyed the rest of the series, but this one is by far my favorite. If you like Hercules, and I have 2 book recommendations for you. Number 1 is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So this is The Lightning Thief. This is book 1 by Rick Riordan. So this is not technically a Hercules retelling of any sort, but it is a Greek mythology retelling. In this one, we're following Percy, who discovers that he is a demigod, and then he goes to camp, and then there's this whole like quest that he has to go on. I just really love this series. Rick Riordan is one of my favorite authors in terms of like middle grade. He's so good at like balancing action, character development, and humor, and I just find myself like loving this world that he's created because there's so many series in this world now. But this one is a good first place to start, and there's also going to be like a Disney adaptation because yes, there are movies, but they're not that great. So I'm very excited to see what is going to be done with the actual Disney adaptation where the author is involved this time around. But the reason why I'm recommending this is because if you like the action in Hercules and the fact that we have a hero that has to overcome a lot of challenges and like basically save the world, then we have a similar character in Percy. And for that, I think if you enjoy Greek mythology and you enjoy a good action-packed middle grade story, then Percy Jackson, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I also have another Greek mythology retelling recommendation that is not Hercules again, but hear me out. So it is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. If you liked the visual aspect of Hercules, then you need to check out Lore Olympus because we have very colorful characters, I guess, like depiction of the gods, kind of like in Hercules where like all of the gods are a different color. It's the same thing in this one, and I love these graphic novels. You can also consume them via webtoon for free, I'm pretty sure. I just love them. They're so pretty. Their story is also great. There are trigger warnings for sexual assault in this, just FYI. But if you like the visual aspect of Hercules, then I think this is a book that you would really enjoy it in. It's Greek mythology retelling, so I mean, what else can you ask for? If you like Dumbo, then may I recommend Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. So in this book, we're following our main character Jacob, who is a vet school student, and he ends up joining a circus during the Great Depression. The reason why I'm recommending this is yes, obviously there's a circus, there's also an elephant that's like the main part of the story, I'd say. There's also a love story there, there's action, there's character development, but the themes between this and Dumbo, like aside from the setting that is fairly similar, the themes in this reminded me a lot of the emotions that I had while watching Dumbo. It's heartbreaking, it's beautiful. There's unfortunately animal cruelty in Water for Elephants as well, so like if it's something that triggers you, I would stay away from this one. But there's also a movie adaptation with Robert Pattinson and Reese Witherspoon that I had forgotten about, but that was very good. But overall, like if you liked the universe of Dumbo and you like a little bit of a sadder story, then I would recommend Water for Elephants. I gave that one a 5 out of 5 stars. I read it a while back, but I remember it being very well written and just loving the story and like the emotions that he gave me. So if this is something that you can handle, then I would highly recommend it. Let's move on to something a little bit more uplifting. If you like Up, then I would recommend you check out The House in the Surveillance Sea by TJ Klune. I feel like I've talked about this book fairly often recently, but this book follows our main character Linus. Linus works at the Department of Charge of Magical Youth. His job is to make sure that the orphanages where like these magical children are up to code, and he writes reports and like he moves on to the next case. But he gets sent to this house on the Surveillance Sea where there's an orphanage with kids who have magical abilities, and his world turns upside down. Similarly to Up, not only is like the ambiance and like the visuals of this book similar to Up, like I feel like with that you got this, but if you liked the fact that like the main character, in this case Linus Baker, but in the movie the old man, if you like the fact that like their world changes when they encounter children and like the way that they open up and kind of relive again after this adventure that they go on, then you would like this because the themes and the overarching storyline, like even though they're different, there's also a lot of similarities between them. I just found myself loving this book to pieces. There's romance, which is not the main part of the plot by the way, but there's that if you want it. There's children who are just so endearing and heartwarming, and I love this book so much. It's one of my favorites. Actually, it's my favorite of last year. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And if you're looking for a good time, if you want something that will wrap you in a gay blanket, as Victoria Schwab said, then look no further than this one. It is so absolutely worth it, and it deserves all the praise that it has gotten. If you like Cinderella, then I would recommend you check out If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. There are a lot of Cinderella retellings out there. I feel like it's one of those tales that gets easily retold, but this is one that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and I don't know why, because it's one of the best ones that I've read. So in this one, we're following our main character Cindy, who is a shoe designer designer, and she kind of ends up having to join this bachelor-like TV show. It's a reality show where like she has to find love basically. She doesn't want to join at first, but she has to because of circumstances, and for her that's an opportunity to get her career started as a shoe designer. There's also the fact that Cindy is plus size in this, so this is something that for me I found very relatable. I just really loved the storyline in this one. I thought it was such an interesting take on Cinderella. There's the fact that Cindy has a great relationship with her stepmother and stepsisters, which I don't think we see very often in Cinderella retellings, but I liked this take on it. The modern like take on the reality bachelor-like TV show. I find that this is something that now I really enjoy. I'm not a bachelor or TV reality show watcher, but I find myself very attracted to books like that now. I just find that they are such fun premises, and this one is no different. I really enjoyed the whole development of this one. I think I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was one of my favorites of 2021, and I feel like more people need to talk about this. It's also the beginning of a new series that will be published by Disney, so there's already 2 books out. A 3rd one is coming out this year. So if you want something that will be fun and different, like an adult romance that is closed door, then I would highly recommend you check out this one. It's such a fun one. If you like Snow White, then I have 2 book recommendations for you. The first one is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. So if you like the origin story behind the evil queen, then you're gonna love this, because this is basically what it is. We're following Shifeng, and she is basically the evil queen, and we're following her story as she becomes that. She doesn't start off as that, but she becomes this evil queen character that we all love to hate. I just found this take to be very interesting. I loved the world building in this one. It's set in an East Asian fantasy world, and I just found that to be very fascinating. I haven't read a lot of books like this. There's also the sequel, which is an actual Snow White retelling, if you prefer the Snow White retelling part, but I preferred this one simply because it's not something that I've read a lot. I feel like the Snow White retelling usually focuses on Snow White, and I found the fact that we were focusing on the evil queen character instead, that was interesting to me. I found that to be an interesting take on it that I hadn't read very often. I highly recommend the audiobook for this one if you want to check it out. I do love the audiobook for this. I read this audibly for the most part, and this was a great experience. I feel like this one doesn't get talked about enough, so if you haven't read it, highly recommend. But if you prefer an actual Snow White retelling, then I would recommend you check out Poisoned by Jennifer Donnelly. I told you this author would come back, didn't I? This is a steampunk retelling, like that's more classic fairy tale vibes of Snow White. So we have our main character who ends up being chased away, trying to run away from the hunter. The hunter actually takes her heart in this one, and she ends up being like having a mechanical heart that's built by the 7 dwarves. Then she tries to go retrieve her heart from the queen, and I thought this was an interesting take on it. Usually this is the hunter doesn't win, he lets her go. In this case, he actually wins and Snow White still lives. So I found that to be a very, well, it's a very quick read as well, like it's about 300 pages, and I just loved the characters in this one, but especially the vibes. Like it read like a classic fairy tale, which I really enjoyed, like a dark, grim steampunk kind of fairy tale, and I like the vibes in this. This is, I think, what I loved the most about it is the ambiance and the setting. The story is also very interesting, but for me, what really made it fun was the fact that it read like a fairy tale. I could see the Grimm brothers inspiration for this, and so I really recommend it if you guys haven't checked it out. I do want to check out the rest of Jennifer Donnelly's backlist because she has written quite a few Disney retellings, so this is an author that I would recommend you check out if you haven't already. If you like Coco, then I would recommend you check out Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. So in Cemetery Boys, we have our main character Yadriel, and Yadriel wants to be a brujo. He is a trans man, and his family doesn't really accept that, and so he's trying to prove himself by performing the ceremony by himself. In the end, he ends up rising a ghost, and that's Julian. But this is a book that I absolutely love to pieces. It reminds me of Coco because it is set on El Dia de los Muertos. Did I pronounce that right? I'm so sorry if I didn't. But it's set on the same day, and basically like we have a similar universe in the sense that the culture is similar there. I like the fact that we had characters who stood up for themselves. There's a self-story that seems impossible. I can't talk about it too much because otherwise I end up spoiling it, but I love this book. I reread it. There's a sequel that's been announced recently, which I'm like, thank you so much. I love this. But I highly recommend that you read that, especially around the fall time. It's good any time of the year, but I think during Halloween, I would recommend. So good. If you like Frozen, especially Frozen 2, then I would recommend you check out Frozen 2 Dangerous Secrets by Mary Mancusi. So I talked about this book at length in one of my most recent vlogs, so I'll link that down below if you want more recommendations because I talk about other books there as well. But I loved this book so freaking much. It is a story that follows Iduna and Agnar. Basically, it is their love story before the events of Frozen, but it affects what we know in Frozen 2. So like if you liked Frozen and Frozen 2, obviously, then this is one that you absolutely need to read. It's so beautiful. I highly recommend the audiobook. I listened to it via audio and it was Chef's Kiss. So incredibly good. One of the best audiobooks that I've listened to. I loved the writing in this one and the characters. I grew to love Iduna and Agnar even though they're not amazing people. I mean, we have seen the events of Frozen, right? But you get to understand where they come from and you get to love them for who they are, and like seeing them grow up and seeing their love story bloom. My heart goes to them. I really enjoy this, like thoroughly enjoy this. And I'm not even a Frozen fan. Like I like Frozen decently enough, but it's one of those movies that I feel is overrated. However, I love this book so freaking much. It's one of my favorite Disney retelling ever. So yeah, highly recommend. If you're a fan of Frozen, you absolutely must read this book. So that is it for my Disney book recommendations. If you guys have Disney movies that you love that I haven't mentioned, let me know in the comments down below. I might make a part 2. And I guess that's it, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!